So, anybody there yet? Hi, Holographic, Bodar, RJ, YouTube. Hey guys. All right. Well, it seems that pre-announcing me going live helps, and that's cool. So I'll give it a couple of seconds for some people to come in, and then we'll get started. So, and Kat is asking me, how am I doing? Yeah, doing good. I want to join DreamWorks. Yeah, who doesn't? Awesome. Okay, guys, I think I'm just going to get started. We got 40 people already, which is awesome. And what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, or actually answer questions that you guys have today, is about the 3D industry. I get questions all the time: how to deal with customers, how much money to ask, what is the workflow like, what do you do when the customer is not happy, and so forth and so forth. Okay. So I'm doing this for the simple reason that I am going to be traveling starting next week. I'm going to be gone for almost a full month, but you know, it's okay because I loaded up a bunch of images and videos for you guys to watch when I'm not there, right? So it seems there are some audio issues. Let's just see if there's any. Is this better? Can you guys let me know? Okay, audio is good. All right, cool. Okay, so let me see. Do I know anything about the Indian 3D industry? Well, yes and no. I know that 3D industry typically is seen as a local thing, but it's not. More and more, you could say that the 3D industry is a really global thing. You have studios working with people all over the world. And in fact, I was at Animago last year, where I found that big companies like Pixar and DreamWorks were talking about projects where they work together with teams all over the place. People in Canada, people in Germany, in France, in Spain, in Italy, in India, everywhere. So yeah. I'm getting a question from Hobo Broccoli. What kind of places have you worked at? Well, if by places you mean countries, I have worked in many. I would say almost every country in Europe. I worked in the Americas. Basically, the only two places I didn't work was in Australia and in New Zealand. But for the rest, you know, virtually a lot and even physically a lot. Okay. All right, let's see what's next. What do I think about having a degree for getting a job as a 3D artist? Well, that's a good question. And let me put it this way. Do you absolutely have to have a degree to get a job? No, you do not. If your work is good, if you deliver solid quality, if you have a good work ethic, you shouldn't have a problem at all. Does it help to have a degree? Of course. Okay, so it kind of depends. So I'm getting a question from Marco saying how to get into the 3D industry when you're a fresh graduate. Well, let me ask you this first, Marco. Are you looking to get a job at a studio, so as an employee, or are you looking to become a freelance 3D artist? I'll give Marco a minute to reply there. Okay, so in studio. Well, if you want to get hired by a studio, obviously you need to live in the vicinity of a studio. It's more likely to get hired than if you are working 600 miles away and you're working remotely and virtually, okay? So if you live in the vicinity of a studio, or preferably multiple studios, let's say because you live in Munich or in Montreal or in somewhere in California, first of all, make sure you're in the proximity. Second, of course, make sure your work is solid, you got a strong portfolio, And then you need to be willing to get in on an entry level, which basically means that you get to do a bunch of shitty jobs, your pay is horrible, and you get bossed around all day long, and people tell you to go and get coffee for them. However, if you are willing to do that, and I always call this, paying your dues, if you will hear a lot of things, you will see a lot of things, and before you know it, you're going to be in the pipeline, okay? So I hope that kind of, addresses that in short. Let's see what else. Okay, so hopefully I pronounced this right. Hishambinamara. Sorry about that, dude. What do you think about starting a freelance career as a 3D artist, and where to start? Well, obviously I am all for that because I am a freelance artist, and what do I think about it? I think it's more risky. Well, it used to be more risky. Now it's, I would say, more the same, because even while working for a studio, you don't really have a lot of security nowadays. You're hired to work on a project that takes, I don't know, 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever. And then typically when the project is done, you're out, right? So I would say by being a freelance artist, I got much more control over who I work with, where I work, and I got more ways to supplement my income. If you work for a studio, it's typically frowned upon if you work for a bunch of other people while you're working for them. And as a freelance, you can work for basically whoever you want and make sure you got multiple streams of income so you're able to pay your bills, right? So, somewhat off-topic question, but nevertheless, what is my hobby? I'm actually a certified fly fish instructor. Nothing to do with 3D, but anyway, okay. How do I take care of my eyesight? Not quite sure what you mean by that. If you mean that is how do you deal with the fact that you're in front of a computer monitor 13, 14 hours a day, that is a thing for sure. So first of all, make sure your working area is well lit. That's really important. And second, make sure that you take a lot of breaks. And I don't mean, go outside, drink coffee, whatever. What I mean is make sure every hour or so, at least 5 minutes, you get up from your chair, you walk around, you stick your head out the door, you get some coffee, whatever, because otherwise you're going to get all sorts of issues in your shoulders, your elbow, your wrist. You're going to get a sore neck, you're going to get headaches, you're going to get burning eyes and all that bad stuff, okay? So let's see. I'm getting a question. So what would I recommend? Studying 3D through college or personal training through online courses? That's a tricky one. And I'm basically going to ask you guys this because what I hear all the time is that people are not satisfied with their college teachers. Now, I don't know a lot of them, but I hear a lot of people complaining about it. And when it comes to self-training or following tutorials and that kind of thing, it's not always that one tutorial is better than the other. It's just sometimes that one tutor fits you better than the other. It's not better, it's not worse. It's just you have a connection with somebody or you don't. I feel that a lot of people that make tutorials online tend to be very technical about what they're explaining, which really doesn't help if English is not your native language, and especially if you're a beginner. So I always try to keep my tutorials simple, basic, and to the point, so everybody can follow regardless of what your native language is. So let's see. I've been in front of a screen 4 or 5 hours a day for 30 years. Main thing is to look at distance objects, 20 meters. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that will help you to focus. Let's see. Where do I look for freelance jobs? A question from Wilman. Well, you look everywhere, and that may sound like a stupid answer, but the thing is that there are opportunities everywhere. You can work for toy manufacturing companies. You can work for your next door neighbor who wants a 3D logo for his website. You can work for a local soccer team because they want a 3D model of their new stadium, whatever. The main thing is to build a network. Be on ArtStation, be on LinkedIn, be professional, have a professional attitude, work on your network every day, and people will find you. Okay? Let's see. Antonio is saying, I teach free basic, and for the foreigner, I do great. Well, keep in mind, I'm a foreigner as well. Okay, so that's why I understand that that is important. And I worked all over the world. And besides language difficulties, there can also be cultural differences. I find that something that you need to take into account as well. So even if you are working as a 3D artist in a global team, it's very much worth your while to invest some time to understand the countries you're working with, the people, and the culture that you're working with. Okay. So Brandon is saying, what kind of freelance jobs are there out there? Well, I work a lot for universities, maybe because I teach, but I tend to have a lot of people in my network that are in universities, and I will do 3D visualizations of molecular structures, DNA structures. I will create 3D props for tutoring. I will create miniature prototype toys. I will create buildings, interiors, basically anything that you can come up with, right? So let's see. So Vincent is saying, I'm studying in a degree right now, and I find having peers and a tutor help to pinpoint the problem of my work. I totally agree, but keep in mind that having peers and tutors is something that you can have virtually as well. If you live in an area where you don't have access to peers or tutors, or you can't afford college or whatever, by getting into right forum groups online, for example, that's one of the reasons why I set up my forum to start with, so people can hang out and help each other out. And I started that in 2015, and now it has 2,600 members. And these are people from all over the world with different skill sets, and that works out quite well. So let's see, it doesn't look at a job after a degree is. So YS Ready is saying, I'm from India. Is it possible to get a job after a degree as a fresher, a beginner in other countries? Yeah, sure it is. Why not? I mean, you know, the big illusion here is that people think you need to have a certain look as a person. You need to talk a certain way. You need to have a certain degree. Really, what a customer is interested in is your output. If you can make the perfect model and the perfect texture and all of that is exactly in line with what the customer wants, the customer typically doesn't care whether you are a 9,000-pound green alien, right? They don't care. So I get a question whether I can share the forum link. Sure, I will. Just hang on one sec. So that's a link to my 3D forum. Like I said, 2,600 members. We have everything. We have graphic designers. We have 3D artists, animators. We got medical 3D animators. We got art directors. We got Disney people. We got Pixar people. You know, so you guys are hereby invited to join, and hopefully you guys will enjoy yourself, right? So let's see, what else? Will I be teaching VFX in next tutorials with Nuke? Probably not, Antonio, for the simple reason that I am not a huge fan of node-based software applications. Although they're very powerful, it kind of takes away the look and feel of being a 3D artist, in my personal opinion. And as I am a 3D artist and really don't have to, because I'm not forced into any type of workflow, I can move forward with the software that I'm using. So, okay. So let's see what else. How old do you have to be to do freelance work? Well, Jacob, based on your name, I'm just going to do a wild guess here and guess that you're from Germany. Are you? Can you just confirm that or deny that? Well, no response yet. But anyway, yes, he is. Okay. Well, guten Morgen, Jakob. I speak a little German, just a little bit. How old do you need to be? Well, how old do you need to be in your country to work altogether anyway, right? What I'm saying here is, are you able to get a paid job, for example, at the age of 16? Yes, you are. That is the thing that has changed over the last 15 years or so. Maybe 20 years ago, it would be unthinkable for a 16-year-old to get hired. Now, like I said just now, people don't really care. If you have the skills, if you can create whatever the customer wants, especially when you're working freelance, why not, right? Of course, you have the legal constraints based on the country where you live, whether you're allowed to work, whether you pay taxes and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, nowadays in the virtual world we live in, I mean, you got 16-year-old YouTube millionaires. I mean, so yeah, it's possible. I wouldn't say you will become a millionaire by 3D modeling, but you can do it. Okay. So Hidden Fireworks saying, how much time does it take to learn one 3D software? Well, again, that depends. If you have 10 years of experience working with Maya, you'll probably learn 3ds Max in a week, right? If you have no experience at all, it will take you, I don't know, years maybe. And it all comes down to what is your previous experience. And the more you learn, the easier it gets. Once you master 3 or 4 or 5 applications, adding a new one can even be a matter of days, okay? So Abdul is asking me, he says, a bunch of tutorials, he can't find character animation. Well, the thing is, I typically don't do characters. I don't do character modeling, therefore I don't do character animation. And people have once asked me, why not? Well, the obvious reason is that I'm not good at it. And why am I not good at it? Because I never do it. Well, why don't I do it? Well, because characters are kind of predictable in most part, right? They're bipeds, they got 2 arms, they got 2 legs. And, if you model 1,000 characters, you got 1,000 models that have 2 arms and 2 legs, mostly. So I find that a little bit boring, to be honest. And I have a technical background originally, so I kind of like environments and props more. Okay, so which render engine do I prefer? V-Ray, Mental Ray, Arnold? Well, I used to use Mental Ray a lot before they killed it, and I'm not a huge fan of Arnold. I tend to use iRay or RenderMan right now. I have used V-Ray in the past as well, but we see a trend in the industry where people are more and more rendering outside of the application that they're working on so standalone applications. And we also see that more and more companies are working towards a GPU-based rendering instead of CPU-based rendering. So I tend to use what I have available, and I tend to look at the project that I'm working on. For example, if I'm working on something like I don't know, a piece of jewelry, I would use kishot because that's usually clean, crisp, it's fast. But if I want to work on something that has a lot of grunge, dirt on it, wear and tear, I would use Substance Painter, okay? What do you do if you don't have any work as a freelancer? Well, I'm lucky enough to have a lot of work as a freelancer. And the last time that I had to supplement my income with something else was years ago. Alice is asking me, do you do weight painting? Yes, I do. Let's see. I assume you're saying how important is creating a portfolio for 3D industry. That is extremely important because that's basically your business card. If I'm going out to hire someone, and for example, right now as we speak, I'm helping somebody. Somebody asked me to write a reference, and I said, okay, I'll write a reference, but I need you to do a complete workflow from concept, low poly, UV, high poly, baking, application, uploading, all that kind of stuff. The reason is whenever somebody wants to hire you, they want to see what your skill is, not just the finished product, but also the process. Okay. So Monel Cole, thank you very much, is asking what I'm planning to do tutorials on FX and dynamics. Well, interesting enough, I just finished one 5 minutes ago, and it's going online tomorrow. Okay. So Fatsal Shohan, I'm 16. Should I become a 3D artist, and is it worth it? Is it worth it? Expressed in what? In your job satisfaction, in the amount of money you make. If you want to become a 3D artist because that's the best way to make a lot of money, then don't. Okay. It is not at all an easy way to make money. In fact, it is very, very hard to make money. Okay. But that's not why most people do this. Most people do this because they love it, right? And they will even do it if they have alternatives that make more money. I mean, keep in mind, I have been a business consultant for a long time, and I made a hell of a lot more money doing that, right? Now, as you guys may or may not know, the pay from YouTube for doing tutorials is not a lot of money at all, right? So you might ask yourself, well, why do you do it then? And right now I spend, I would say 60% of my time making YouTube tutorials. Well, why do I do it? Because I love to do it. I love the interaction with the people that respond to it. And I love helping people, you know, progress in their skill set. I like that because I had the same opportunity back in the day, and I feel I need to give back, okay? But if you want to make a lot of money, go and do something else. Work for a bank, go into insurance or whatever. Can you make enough money to survive? Yes, you can. But you need to be able to work very, very, very hard. I tend to work 7 days a week, and I would say about 12 to 14 hours a day. I'm not always working for customers. I'm networking. I'm answering questions, emails, and all that kind of stuff. But you're always thinking about the next job. If I got work on my desk for the next month, I'm thinking about, okay, what's going to come next after that? And people ask me all the time, how much money can I ask when I work? Well, keep in mind that not every hour of the day is going to be a billable hour. So you're not going to make money every day and every hour you work. So if you are working, let's say, 2.5 days a week making money, then that 2.5 days a week has to cover 5 days a week, right? So that's one of the main reasons why I always say do not, and I repeat, do not work for free for customers. People will promise you everything. You know, you'll get exposure, you'll be famous, blah, 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 blah. Don't do it. First of all, you're going to hurt yourself. Second, you're going to hurt every other 3D artist in the industry, right? Because in order for you to survive as a 3D artist, you need to make a certain amount of money. Now, if people go out and sell their models for $5, basically they're screwing everybody, right? Okay, so Marco is asking, what's better for 3D, Mac or Windows? Well, historically, a Mac is stronger from a graphics point of view, But I have always worked with Windows. And the reason why is that there's a much wider range of applications and plugins available in Windows that will help me in my extended workflow. Now, what do I mean by extended workflow? For example, I do a lot of video editing. I do photo manipulation. I do, I don't know, like an office package, all that kind of stuff. Everything together for me, you know, I just prefer Windows. And even if I had all the money in the world, I'd still work on a Windows machine. Okay. So let's see what else. So a question. Am I going to teach Mudbox? I have in the past. I will not in the future. And why not? Well, for the simple reason that Mudbox, and people have different opinions on the matter, but in my opinion, Mudbox is basically dead. Okay. Autodesk is incorporating more and more sculpting tools into Maya, and I expect them to stop creating Mudbox in the near future, for the simple reason that ZBrush or ZBrush is the industry standard nowadays, and there's no way for them to compete with that. Okay. So Andreas is asking me, do I have any tips on showing breakdowns? Well, that depends on what you are applying for. There's a big difference whether you're going for the gaming industry, let's say TV commercials, feature film, and whatnot. But what any potential client wants to know is what is your workflow, okay? So you could go with a wireframe render of a low poly. You can show the UV map. You can show the high poly. You can show a couple of baked maps. You can show what's it called? What's that rotating thing called? The disc thing, right? So you show the animation. But again, it depends on what you're going for, because if you are applying as a generalist and you kind of want to show off all your skills, or yeah, there you go, turntable. Thank you, Andreas. Or you are a specialist and you want to show off your lighting skills. And that kind of depends. And what I always tell people is, if you cannot afford to just apply for lighting jobs, if you're a lighting specialist, make 2 portfolio pages, one as a generalist and one as a specialist. Okay. So Mohan is saying, just learning Autodesk Maya from Institute. Can I find jobs just on 3D modeling? 3D modeling without any UVing or texturing skills, I would say, is very, very unlikely. There's so many people out there nowadays that can create a fairly decent 3D model that is fully textured. So at the very least, you need to make sure that you know how to create a low poly model, how to UV that low poly model, how to texture that model, and how to render that model. Okay, that will get you into low poly 3D mobile games and that kind of stuff. Next step would be to develop your high poly skills. So you know how to sculpt, how to add detail to a high poly, how to bake maps from high to low poly, and that will get you a wider range of jobs. So let's see. Can I give you, Kushal is saying, can you give me any tips on modeling in Maya? Sure. I got a YouTube channel with about 900 videos on it. So that's all I can say on the matter. ZBrush is expensive. I think it's $800. It's very expensive. I mean, and for example, Kishot is even more expensive. That is why you should not work for free or sell your models for 10 bucks, right? I got a question the other day. How much money do you need to make a day to make it as a freelance 3D artist? Well, somebody did a calculation online and came up with, I don't know, something like $140 a day to make it as a 3D artist. That is not nearly enough. Considering that you have, let's say, I don't know, 2 days, 2 days a week to make money, or 2.5 days, you're looking at, I would say, at least $500 a day, right? Because that will give you, let's say, I don't know, let's say $5,000 a month. Now that sounds like a lot of money, right? but you have to pay for hardware, you have to pay for software, you have to pay your taxes, you have to pay your insurance, all that kind of stuff. And then at the end of the day, the money that's left compares to a somewhat normal income if you were working for a studio. Okay, so now there's a question here that I get, I would say like 10 times a week. Is Maya better than 3D Max? And why did you make any tutorials for 3D Max? Well, the reason is that Maya originally was intended specifically for animation, and especially Maya LT or Maya Lite was intended for game animation. So Maya LT and Maya for animation and character related, modeling related to animation, where 3ds Max is much more towards photorealistic interiors, exteriors, and so forth. Okay, so yeah, one is not better than the other. They're just different. And once you make a choice, and in my case it's Maya, you kind of stick with it. I hear people saying more and more that Maya is the industry standard. Well, it is if you are talking about, modeling for games, for movies, for animations, and that kind of thing. However, if you are working for businesses that are into, let's say, for example, real estate or project developers or architects, where they're making buildings and interiors, then I would say 3ds Max is the way to go. Okay. So I'm getting a question here. If I'm working as a freelancer, do I need to have a website? Well, no, you don't. Can you? Yes. But in my experience, it costs a lot of money. You have to maintain it. And for the simple fact that activity online, like, for example, on Facebook and other social media, that information is refreshed every second or so. So from a search engine optimization point of view, any information you post on something like that, or let's say ArtStation, will be updated and refreshed in minutes. If you have your own website, that can take weeks or months before it updates, okay? So why would you have a website? If people are interested in looking at your work, then why not do that on ArtStation and tell them, okay, if you want to reach me and so and so. That said, the vast majority of work that you get as a freelancer, you get from people that know you. What do I mean? Like I said before, network. I tend to spend hours every day working on my network, talking to people, emailing to people, being active in forums, introducing yourself, telling them what you do, ask them for a reference, and so forth. And after a month, 30 people. After half a year, 500. After 5 years, 5,000. That's how you get your jobs, okay? At least in my case. So, Chris, thanks for your time and valuable advice. Very welcome. Let's see. Is the VFX industry the same as a 3D industry, considering the pay? Well, before I get into the pay part of it, the VFX industry and the 3D industry are becoming more and more the same. And I'm not talking about pay per se. And I'll explain. I was at an event recently, an industry event, where they did a kind of a preview of that last Pirates of the Caribbean movie, or the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, however you pronounce that. And they looked at the ghost ship come out of the ocean. Now, obviously, none of that is real, because it's a ship with a bunch of holes in it and it doesn't float, right? So when they told the group who worked on this, it was kind of a mix. You had 3D people, you had specifically VFX people, and as more and more movies are working with 3D related work, it's kind of blending. And as a result of that, the pay there is blending as well. So it kind of depends on your definition of what you call VFX, okay? Okay, so Michael is saying, is it worth getting kishot? Well, kishot is very, very expensive. However, kishot is very, very, very awesome. because it creates a quality of rendering that is unheard of. And a lot of people that do character work in ZBrush will render out in kishot. Now, before I forget, guys, and this is very, very important, so all of you, please, please, please pay attention. I need about 350 more subscribers to hit 75,000 subscribers on my channel. And when I do, and I expect to hit that by next week, I'm going to do a huge giveaway on YouTube. And one of the things that I'm going to be giving away is a full professional kishot license. Okay. And I'm also going to be giving away a Marvelous Designer license and a B&Q graphics monitor, right? So make absolutely sure you do not miss that, all right? Okay, so please tell me you're going to see that and, you know, that kind of thing. Awesome. All righty. So let's see, what else? Do I think it's better, Javier, I assume that's how you pronounce it? Do you think it's better to know about several modeling software packages? I do. I think it's really important. I would develop one skill set first and then take it from there, though. It's better to know everything about one than a little about everything, okay? Spread the gospel. Awesome. Okay, so Antonio is saying, I teach great. Thank you very much. What's my opinion on Blender? Well, Blender is awesome. Blender is free, as you know. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, I would say. It's a really good thing because it opens up the 3D industry to the entire world because you don't have to pay 1 cent to use it. The thing is, though, that as a result, Blender is an application that, like any other application, needs to be maintained and updated and all kind of stuff, and that costs a lot of money. And as they're not asking money for the product, there's a chance that the product will not be, updated and upgraded when it should be. I'm not sure if that's the reason, but Blender is not considered an industry standard, although I have seen people make absolutely awesome pieces. Now, if you're getting into the 3D industry or you want to model and you don't really know or you don't have money to do that, I would recommend starting in Blender. And when you have all the skills that you need in Blender, it's a really small step to go from Blender to Maya. And even Maya, you can get a 3-year free student license. So that wouldn't cost you anything either, okay? Let me see. So Chris is saying, do you think it's critical to have I assume that's a typo, have a solid drawing background to be a good 3D artist? Well, maybe. I personally have a traditional drawing background originally, and it used to be very important. Now, it's not important because you have to draw. It's important because you understand the elements of composition, framing, perspective, lighting, and so forth. When you train as an artist, let's say painting, drawing, sketching, that kind of thing, you understand a lot more usually about, how light reflects on objects, how curves influence light, how perspective works, with vanishing points and all that kind of stuff. When you're working in 3D, that can definitely come in handy. And that's something that I'm going to be talking about in October. I'm going to be speaking at Animago again, and I'm also going to be speaking in Los Angeles in October at an event. And what I'm going to be talking about is how you take the next step. So let's say you are at a professional level, you're making money, you're completely self-supporting. How do you take the next step to improve your skills? That is by understanding how you can add more story to your models. And for that, you need to be able to understand how to incorporate those elements. So you get into areas, and I talked about this in the video, of photography. So framing, composition, lighting, focal points, bokeh, all that kind of sweet stuff, right? So Eamon is saying, should I go to school to improve my skills, or is it enough to do it through the internet? I would say whatever works for you. If you have the opportunity to go to college, if you have the opportunity to do that, and in the meantime don't make any money, and you got good professors and all kind of stuff, of course, I would. But if you don't, that doesn't mean you can't make it. You are still able to do a lot if you connect with the right people. So you would go in and in forums, you would connect with people, work with people, you would look at online tutorials and build your skill set that way. So what does it take to work for something like Disney? Well, oddly enough, especially nowadays, it doesn't really matter whether it's Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks or whatever. And of course, Pixar is owned by Disney. So YOLO, do me a favor and kind of say fuck 20 times so we can get that out of the way. Let's see, recommend forums and online courses. Well, there's a 3D modeling and animation group that has close to 100,000 members. I really like that one. Of course, I got my image tutorials hangout group, and I tend to say that the difference there is, especially for people that are fairly new to the industry, they don't really get a lot of negative feedback, and in some other areas they do. So I would just go onto Facebook and look for several areas. I also got a Google Plus group if you're interested, so you can check that out too. Let's see, Ellie is asking, what's the difference between 3ds Max and Maya? I think you just missed that. I explained that, but basically 3ds Max, architecture work, interior, exterior buildings, and Maya more related to gaming and animation. Let's see. Hey, Lee, how are you doing? I see some familiar faces. There you go. Well, not faces, names. Okay, so let's see. Unbuilt night. Using photogrammetry is preferred for 3D artists, or should it hinder in manual skills? Not quite sure what you mean by that. So Emil is asking, is there a minimum fee you would request for a project? Well, define project. When I'm working, for example, let's say I'm in my forum group and somebody says, okay, I need a model for a soccer ball to help me out in a project that I'm working on. I need to submit it tomorrow, and it's 10 minutes work, and it's somebody that's in my personal network, and I know that I'm going to be able to ask that same person for a favor somewhere down the road. I would do that. But working for free for a peer is different than working for free for a customer, okay? The customer is always going to try to give you an idea that, you know, you need to do it, otherwise you're not going to be working. But minimum fee, I mean, regardless how small the project is, you're typically working on something for an hour, right? So even if it's a favor, if it's a customer, I would say a very minimum of, let's say, $50 at least, okay? Let's see. Computer controller says, I need to get to Pixar. I have to. Can I without a degree? Well, like I said, unlikely, but you would basically have to move to California, move next door to Pixar, get in a sleeping bag, sleep on their front doorstep for a month, and bug John Lasseter every day, and then you probably have a chance. So Nicholas Kemp is saying, how many pieces would you recommend for a portfolio when applying for jobs? Well, it's not about the number of pieces. It's about a studio or a company is looking for skill sets. And whatever you need to demonstrate that skill set, you know, whether it's one piece or 20, it's fine. let's say you are an environmental artist. If you can show one environment that basically has everything, it's fine. If you're a lighting artist, you want to show different types of lighting. Let's say a daylight lighting, night lighting, I don't know, like a scary lighting, whatever, then you would probably do more. So whatever helps you, okay? So Marco is saying $50 an hour. Well, $50 an hour depends a lot on where you live and who you're working for, okay? The wages that are earned by people worldwide are extremely, there's an extremely wide range because the cost of living is different as well. I mean, if you are, let's say you're living in New York, right? If you're living in New York, then your rent is probably $2,500. If you're living in Poland, your rent is probably $300. So obviously, you don't need to make a lot more money. And of course, you got lower rates in New York and you got higher rates in Poland, but just to give you an idea, okay? So yeah, if you can make the bills, then you're good. So Mark O is asking me, do I do portfolio reviews? Well, actually, what I do is I do a lot of private sessions with people because I have to pay bills too. And like I mentioned, YouTube doesn't really pay that great. So people book my time as basically a Skype consultant, if you will. And, you know, some people do that 1 hour a month or 2 hours a month. And when we do that, I'll go through their portfolio. I'll give them tips. I'll help them out with issues they might have in Maya or other applications. And that's how that works. So to answer your question, yes, I do. Okay, so Richard Perkins is saying, can you recommend any courses to get me started with character rigging? I can. I recommend that you get into my Facebook Hangout group, and there are a bunch of people there that know everything about characters and character modeling. Okay. Okay, so Dax the King, a very, very loyal fan, is saying, does multi-thread in processors make any difference in our render time? For example, 8-core, 16 threads, will those 16 threads make a difference? Yes, they will. They will definitely make a difference. And a very good example is Marvelous Designer, because in that application, when you set up your preferences, you actually have to define exactly what your thread count is. So that's a yes. Johnny is saying, is there some kind of boot camp where you get a job after a paid hands-on crash course? Well, unfortunately, there's no such thing as a crash course. I can sit down with somebody for a week, right? And you'll learn the buttons and you'll learn the functions, but that's not what 3D modeling is about. 3D modeling is about telling a story. Now, it's like driving a car. I don't know how many people here drive a car or not, but once you have driving lessons, they kind of tell you how to use a stick shift or how to use the brake and the clutch and whatnot. You learn to drive after you have driven for a number of years, okay? Now, working in the 3D industry is so much more than knowing where the buttons are and what they do. It's how to use all that knowledge to get the story across, right? So Andreas is asking me what I ask for those sessions, and because he will be interested in that. Well, if you send an email to hermesmike@hotmail.com, we can talk about it, okay? So James is saying Japan is known for 2D, but have been looking into the 3D industry in Japan, so that it has been growing. What do you think about that? The 3D industry in Japan is hard, and I have actually worked in Japan. I've been there. It's one of the most amazing countries in the world, in my personal opinion, but that's kind of off topic. Anyway, the 3D industry is extremely hard for people to get into in the Japanese, in Japan, if you're not Japanese or not fluent in Japanese, because the culture and the language is still a big thing there. And if you need to compete with people with similar skills, you're going to have a pretty hard time, in my opinion. Marcin, yes, you can email me, of course. Let's see, is freelancing a better way to go? Well, I get that question all the time. Is it better to be a freelancer or stick to a job? Well, normally, let me put it this way. Is it better to be an independent business owner or to work for a boss? Well, pros and cons. If you work for a boss, you know you're going to get paid. You don't have to worry about it. You go home at 5 o'clock or whatever, and it's not your problem. If it's your business, then it's always your problem. The big difference is you got much more freedom, but you also got much more risk. Okay, so that's kind of your personal situation, whether that's acceptable or not. So Salman Ali is saying, I'm studying at University of Edinburgh, Scotland, doing masters in design and digital media. I've made games, AR games, and currently working on VR game. Do you think I can get a job in UK or EU? Well, like I've been saying, that all depends on how good you are. I mean, if your work is good, absolutely. So what do I charge for 3D works? We kind of went over that, but that very much depends on the project. Now, this is an awesome question. Oh, actually, what time is it here? It's 10 minutes to 2 in the afternoon. So I get a question here. Let's see, where do you go? What do I feel about the higher education system as far as getting people prepared for the industry? Well, unfortunately, there is, like in most industries, a huge disconnect, which is very unfortunate, because you spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money to get your degree, and then you get into the industry, and it's usually a fairly shocking experience, because you're not really prepared for all the non-3D stuff. I mean, okay, so you get your bachelor's or master's, and you know everything about Maya and ZBrush and all that kind of stuff. What you don't know is the human interaction, right? And how people respond to you and how you respond to them and all that kind of stuff. So some better than others, but usually that's the thing. Is there still room for new artists on 3D sites like Turbosquid? In my honest opinion, specifically about Turbosquid, I would say not really. Turbosquid is a good example of what's wrong in the industry. People used to sell models on there that they worked on for 80 hours, and they would sell it for $300, $400, $500. They're now selling the same model for $15, and other people come in and sell it for $5. So it's not worth your while, in my opinion. There are new sites out there that are doing the same thing, and you get a higher percentage. But I tend to stay clear from that. There are much better ways of making money with your time. Let's see. Get a friendly barrier to entry. Okay. So as the 3D modeling software gets better and user-friendly, the barrier to entry will get lower. Won't this affect the value of work of a 3D artist? And the need for specialization will decrease. Now, that is an awesome question. You probably all know about 3D scanners, and you take an object and it's you go over it and you got a 3D scan and you're done, right? Now, so normally that would take you a lot of time as a 3D artist, and now it's so easy, and you got little apps and you throw it on your system and you're done. Well, that's not quite true, because this scans something that's real, right? The more this happens, in my personal opinion, the bigger the need will be for real 3D artists, for the simple reason that whenever somebody wants something that is non-existing, right, they need to have somebody that can create something that doesn't exist. So that involves concept work. It involves 3D modeling. It involves preparing it in a way that will work in a game engine, for example, and typically 3D scans don't. So I'm not worried about that at all. Okay, so Marco was asking about how to become a freelance, especially when you're straight out of school and you have to buy, for example, Maya, which is really expensive and so forth. Well, first of all, I wouldn't buy Maya. You know that you can't use Maya student license commercially, so don't do that. What I would do, though, as a good alternative is use Blender. We just talked about that. Blender is completely free. It's also free for commercial use, so that's a good way for you to start making money, okay? And then, like I said before, I would start to work in my local network. I would go and talk to local businesses, right? I would ask them, do you need something for your website? Do you need a visualization of that new product that you're making? Do you need whatever? You know, get into the forum and so forth. So Camus is saying Maya is $40 a month. It's more like $250 a month, which is very expensive. And keep in mind that whenever, and I mean, Maya Light. Okay, I don't use Maya Light. Okay, so let's talk about money for a second here. And I'm kind of surprised that you guys are not asking me a lot more about what about the money in industry. Okay, you guys are asking, so how much should I ask and how much do I want to make and whatever. But the nitty gritty here is you need to approach this in a way, how much money do you need, not how much money do you want, okay? And go from there. So what you need to do is you need to come up with a business plan. If you're a freelance artist, you say, okay, I got a computer and this has a lifetime of, let's say best case scenario, 4 years, probably 3, but let's say 4. So after 4 years, you need to have a complete new system. You need to pay for that. So you need to save money for that. You need to pay for Maya. You need to pay for ZBrush. You need to pay for all that kind of stuff. You need to pay for the days that you're not making any money. So when you do all that calculation, you come up with a number, and then you break it down to your billable hours, and then you know how much money you need to make, okay? Let's see. Will I one day change my 3D into game industry? Probably not, Ellie. Probably not. Not that I don't like games, but it's a complete different animal. And I typically don't work for the game industry. I usually work for movies, commercials, and industrial clients. So Camus has a good question. How do you write up a quote? Well, like I said, it's usually time-based. So what I do is I figure out, okay, so I am going to spend, let's say, 10 hours working on a project for a customer. That's my estimate, right? Now, I know how much money I need to make an hour to pay my wages, and then I got a percentage that I calculated. Okay, so for every hour that I work, let's say, and I'm just top of my head getting some number here, right? So what do I need per billable hour to cover my costs for my PC, for my software, for my taxes, for all that kind of stuff? So for example, I would say, okay, $40 an hour plus $10 an hour to cover all that stuff, which makes $50. Now, I'm not going to tell the customer what I need to cover my PC and my software or whatever. You need to have a good understanding of a percentage. So you got fixed cost and you got variable costs. So what do I mean by fixed cost? I need to pay for Maya regardless whether I'm working or not. I need to pay for Maya regardless whether I'm sending invoices or not. So if I work 2 hours a month, right, I would have to take that entire amount from Maya and stick it in that 2 hours. I can't do that because the customer won't pay me, right? So you need to figure out what's my fixed amount a month that I have to make, what is the variable amount. And what you then do as a starting artist is you figure out, okay, how many days can I work commercially? So I would start, for example, by working on Saturdays only. So I would have a day job Monday to Friday, work on Saturdays as freelance, start to make some money, right? And then maybe add Sunday and work and make some money there. And once I got a steady income on Saturday and Sunday, I can say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my job on Monday, and I'm going to start to model and do 3D stuff on Monday as well. And you kind of make that transition forward. But you need to be willing to make that transition backward as well, if you need to, right? So you need to have this mentality of, I'm working 4 days a week as an artist. If suddenly I don't have a job in 3D for 3 months, I'm going to drive a cab or work as a waiter or whatever until I got enough work to go back to 3D again. That's the kind of the rough part. So can I make an in-depth tutorial on particles? I did several, actually. Let's see. Nicholas, in your experience as a 3D artist, do you ever feel your skills were inadequate when you did your first job, and how did you overcome challenge? Again, excellent question. Trust me, the first time you sit down at a desk to work for a client, whether it's at a studio or as a freelance artist, trust me, you will feel inadequate, because there are, let's say, a potential of 10,000 scenarios that could come your way, and you probably only encountered 1 or 2 so far because you're brand new out of school and you don't know. Now, the key here, in my personal opinion, is to be completely honest with the customer and, you know, ask payment accordingly. If you apply for a job at a studio, you probably become a junior artist, and your boss knows you're a junior artist, right? And they know you have to learn, but then again, you're cheaper. As a freelance artist, you typically apply for jobs that you know you can do. So you'd say, okay, I'm going to create a 3D model for somebody. Fine. If somebody says, create a 30-minute long full feature animated movie for me, you know you cannot do that. You know, even if you had the skills, you cannot do that alone. So that's what you need to kind of figure out. Okay, so Marcus is saying polygonal modeling over NURBS modeling, and his teacher is saying that if you want a quick and good model, NURB curves might be a good idea. I do not agree. Why do I don't agree? Because making the model is never the end station. You make a model for a reason. The model will go towards a movie, will go towards a game, will go in a pipeline to a next artist. So the fact that it's easier for you doesn't really matter that much. It's more about what is most efficient in a pipeline. So what are the most important, most requested, and most needed techniques in Maya? Well, again, good question. Well, you have questions that are asked a lot, and then you have questions that are not asked that often, but are paid very well. So that's the kind of the mix you want to go for. It's referred to in the industry as a T model artist, as in T-pose, you know what I mean, with the arms like that, meaning that you have a wide range of skills. So you're a generalist, but you got one specialty. That's why you're a T model artist, okay? So if you are really good in lighting, right? The lighting specialists are very important in the industry. They usually make good money. Let's say things like environmental artists are sought after. The easiest thing to do, and therefore something that doesn't pay great, is props modeling. If you are good at making oil drums and wooden crates and pallets and whatnot, you can make a living, but you're not going to make a lot of money because everybody knows how to do that, right? So I would develop myself as a generalist and then take a specific topic that I really like and that I'm good at, and then become a specialist, okay? Hopefully that answers that question. Okay, so what is the one piece of advice I would give? And again, I love that question. Now, to answer that question, I need to apologize up front, because I kind of have a sense that most of you guys are fairly young, anyway, way younger than I am. So I need to be a really old fart right now for a minute, okay? So the one piece of advice that I would want to give you guys is show respect. Why is that so important? You already know how hard it is to make it in the 3D industry. So anybody and everybody you are ever going to work with, if they have any level of success, right, then they have worked on it for years and years and years and years, right? And they have been through all the steps you have been through, and you are basically asking them to give their knowledge to you for free, right? Help you get on your way, help you make money, and so forth. And what I see a lot, unfortunately, is that people really don't respect that fact. So if you want to make it in the industry, accept the fact that you're new, accept the fact that you're young. Don't let people walk all over you, but respect the fact that you are starting at an entry level and you need to learn the ropes, right? Okay, so computer controllers is saying that I'm not answering his question. Please answer it. Unfortunately, I got a bunch of questions flying over. Please repeat your question. I'll answer it. Computer controllers. The one thing you should never forget. Well, I think I basically just answered that, and that is that respect. Okay. And I see that 3D Viper is here, and 3D Viper is one of the best ZBrush or ZBrush modelers in the world, and he's awesome, and I really like to call him a close friend. So hi, Henry. What position that I would want at Pixar? I wouldn't want a position at Pixar. Let me see here, Mike. If you are working as a freelance and some game company asks you or you reach them to model something, then the full model to actually, do they set a poly count depending on the model? Yes, of course. You typically get a poly count budget. Now, if you don't get a budget, you will ask the customer for a budget. So based on the application, are they creating a mobile game, let's say for on a cell phone, a console game, a PC game? Is it going to be something online? Is it going to be, whatever? So, and is it going to be a side prop? Is it going to be an environmental prop? Is it going to be a main character, a main weapon? So all of that together kind of depends on what that poly count would be. Now, you always need to be careful when you're working with the customer. They will give you an initial estimate, and then they typically tend to go up and up and up as they have additional questions or additional things they want to do. They want you to do. And that doesn't only apply to your poly count. It also applies to your pay. So if you agree on a fixed amount to do something, and while you're working on it, you get more and more and more questions, that affects the pay as well. So computer controllers, to answer your question, can someone get to Pixar if his or her work is good? I assume you mean better than normal. If you are really, really good, yes, there is a possibility. It is very, very slim, but it's possible. Okay, what is the most essential skill that every artist should have? That is the ability to listen. Listen to your peers, listen to your teachers, listen to your customers. A customer will tell you what they want, but typically a customer will not tell you what they want, but you still need to read between the lines, because there's a certain dynamic going on, right? And then you need to figure out, okay, why is this person not telling me what they want me to do? Because they maybe have a manager that is not allowing them to ask you, or they don't have a budget, or they don't know how to express it, or whatever. So you always need to be very clear in your communication, be honest, be fair, and tell them what you want. My motto has always been, in everything I did in my life, say what you're going to do and do what you're going to say. Okay, I think that would be it. Do entry-level game artists get paid well? No, not really. So suddenly you got like a lot of stuff going on there. Well, thank you, computer controllers. You work for Rockstar Games. I know them well. I haven't worked for them because I typically don't work for game studios, but I know them. What software do I prefer for texturing? I've used Quixel Suite. I've used 3D Coat. I currently use Substance Painter. And I would say that Substance Painter is my favorite right now. But there's certain elements. For example, 3D Coat is awesome for UV mapping. It's really a really quick process. So I tend to use bits and pieces. Johnny is saying, do you think one could get away without a Wacom tablet for 3D modeling? It kind of depends on what you're modeling. I mean, if you are into character modeling and you are doing that with, let's say, a high to low poly bakes, you basically would need a tablet. It doesn't have to be a Wacom tablet, but you would need a tablet. If you are, let's say, working on low-level props, you wouldn't need one. One more question from computer controllers. Mudbox or ZBrush? ZBrush for sure. Let's see. What was it for UV map with 3D code? What's the max pay a 3D artist could earn? Depending on a lot of things, where you live, who you work for, whether you are a senior artist, whether you are in charge of a bunch of people, and everything else, I would say the absolutely freakish top amount as an employee, not as a business owner, I would say somewhere in the range of $100,000 to $150,000. Let's see. Ellie is saying, do I think 3D will change into VFX? I would say they are blending into each other. Hidden Fireworks, any thoughts on Marmoset tool bag? Oh, yes. I use Marmoset, and I think it's really, really great because it gives you a lot of insight in how the process works. So, for example, for those of you who don't know, you can model, let's say, a low poly in Maya and UV it. You can create a high poly in ZBrush. You can then take everything into Substance Painter and bake all your maps. And then you can go into Marmoset tool bag, load in your low poly, and apply all the maps that you've created. And you can render that out in Marmoset, and it looks awesome. So what should we avoid doing while networking? Is there anything specific that is a huge turnoff for potential employers? Yes. But I don't think this applies specifically to 3D artists. I think in general, in business, this applies. First of all, never talk about previous customers, because you usually work with an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement, meaning that the customers that you work for, they expect you to keep everything they tell you secret. So don't go and talk to new customers about previous customers, because they will think that if you are talking about them, you're going to be talking about them as well, right? So don't do that. And then try to keep things professional, which means in general, whenever you are in a workplace, never talk politics and never talk religion, okay? Okay, game industry versus film when it comes to making money. Well, the game industry is much, 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 much bigger, so it's easier to make money there. And nowadays, because it's a billion-dollar industry, I would say it's probably easier to make more money as well. So Mamoon is asking, been graphic designing, but now focusing on 3D. Should I quit graphics and focus on 3D? I would not quit graphics. I would combine the two, because that is very much sought after. If you can create 3D motion graphics with a traditional graphic design background, you got a lot of opportunities. Okay, so difference between substance designer and marvelous designer. That is a huge, huge, huge difference. This is like comparing a truck to a banana, right? Substance designer is created to allow you to build textures. Marvelous designer is to simulate cloth. Totally different. Let's see. Let's see. The come freelance. We just learned. So, Dark Jedi, is it crazy to think I can become a freelance 3D artist with just learning on my own spare time? I work in the tech industry full-time, but nothing related to art or game development. Well, Dark Jedi, love your name, by the way. I have been a mechanical engineer. I have been a business consultant. And then I decided I want to chuck it all and work in 3D. And I had to make money at the same time because I couldn't afford to just stop because I was, I got bills. So I basically did the same thing. Now, I did go to college, but I went to night college and did that while I was working. So yeah, you can do that. So James is asking, what work have you done in Japan? If you were to work again in Japan, what would you advise? I have been learning Japanese many years with qualifications, but is there more than just language? Yes. What I did there, I did a lot of things there, a lot of technical things, but the advice that I once got from a Japanese CEO, and I'm not sure whether it's true or not, but this is what he told me. He said, and I'm totally okay with this. He told me that as a foreigner in Japan, in the best case scenario, you're tolerated but never accepted. Okay, now that's fine. I mean, I'm not Japanese. I never will be Japanese, so that's okay. So if you understand where you are at and they understand where they're at, then you can build up a good working relationship. But never expect to reach the inner circle. It's never going to happen, in my opinion. Right, guys. Well, we're pushing an hour and 20 minutes. So let's say, another 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to call it a day. Let's see. What is my favorite YouTuber in 3D world? I don't really have a favorite YouTuber in 3D world. I do have a favorite 3D artist. Is that okay too? Will I do another live Q&A? Yes, I will. I'm going to try to do that probably every month or so.